Thank you for joining us today for the What Sales Can Learn From interview series. I am your host, Carole Mahoney, the founder of Unbound Growth. Now, if you're like me and believe that everything is selling, then you know that selling is a part of everyday life. Whether you're in a traditional sales role, or if you're an entrepreneur who's trying to get investors or hire employees, or even if you're an employee who is trying to convince others of your ideas, abilities, and vision, we are all in sales. And if we're all in sales, we should be able to learn from each other. To truly learn, we need to look outside of our own world to get a different perspective on our own. That is why once a month, I will be talking with sales experts in other industries and professions and asking them to share with you how they've tackled tough challenges so that we can learn from their experiences and apply it to sales. Here we go. I am so excited to have Christopher Freeze with us today on this episode of What Sales Can Learn From. Chris was appointed to the position of Special Agent in charge of the FBI Jackson's Mississippi field office in September of 2016. As head of the FBI in Mississippi, Mr. Freeze worked to strengthen partnerships with public and private sector agencies, bring attention to the challenges that face law enforcement, and encourage individuals to demonstrate leadership in all aspects of both their professional and personal life. He recently, like 5 days ago, retired from the FBI after 23 years and is devoting his time to providing leadership coaching and bringing attention to childhood trauma and the need to help see children with fresh eyes. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Carole. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was so thrilled to hear you speak on stage, and like so many others that I've spoken to, I was struck by how some of the things that you talked about relate to people in sales today, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're in management, or you're in executive leadership. And I think that there's three areas really where some of the work that you've done has direct application to what salespeople need to do to succeed. And the first thing that struck me was when you were talking about building rapport. From the FBI special agent perspective, what are some of the ways that we can build rapport and better?
Well, Carole, I think that's a great place to start. When you think about the work that we do, there's really different types of people that we speak to on a regular basis, right? You got the victim of a crime, you got the subject of a crime, and you've got witnesses of that crime. And so you've got people from all different walks of life. You've got people from all different socioeconomic positions. Everything is different about each person. And so you have to be able to sit with them, to talk with them, and to build that level of trust, build that level of rapport in a way that you can receive the information you need to receive. So I think a lot about my background and what I've done particularly early in my career, when I was sitting down with individuals who didn't know me from Adam. I was just a knock on the door, right? And here I am asking to speak with somebody. I tend to think a lot of it is being genuine, right? I know the TVs and the movies, books portray FBI as, sometimes either the foil of the movie and the bad guy, or, we're stoic and we don't have a personality. But by and large, a lot of the time was me knocking on the door, introducing myself professionally, who I was, and asking to speak with them. In addition to that, really it was the transparency. Because as you can imagine, if I knocked on your door and you didn't know me and I'm with the FBI, you're going, what's this all about, right? And I found that the more I was willing to share with them about why I was there, my intended purpose, what I hoped to gain from our conversation, they were much more at ease. And so that's what I tried to do every time. It didn't always work, but by and large, if you present yourself genuinely and you are transparent about why you're there, they will invite you in. Then you need to sit down and really start talking to them in a way that doesn't seem stoic and cold and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And for salespeople who are listening, and managers too, especially when you're talking about the way that people make decisions today. You've probably heard the phrase like death by committee. You get more than one person involved and suddenly it becomes separate conversations that you're having, almost like you had described the separate people that you have to talk to, whether the victim or the witness or the suspect of it all. everybody has a viewpoint. Everybody has an idea of what they think happened or why it happened. And so being able to build rapport with all those distinct individuals is not easy. And it's funny that you mentioned the way that people might see FBI agents. I certainly have I actually was talking with a client of mine earlier today and said, hey, I'm having a conversation with an FBI agent. He's like, you're not in trouble, are you? And I just laughed because he wasn't the only person to say that. And the thing is that you're probably countering a lot of the same biases, distrust, apprehension that salespeople encounter when they're trying to talk to people. And, sales is the number one most distrusted profession in the world. Everybody has a bias for that. And I talked with Robin Dreek, who a few weeks ago. What are some of the ways that salespeople can start to learn what someone's bias may be in order to help to know what their approach is or help to build that rapport? Is there some tricks of the trade that you've learned over your 23 years that you could share?
Every time I went out to talk to somebody, I tried to do my homework, right? I wanted to know as much as I could. Now, when I first started, we didn't have social media and we didn't have the internet to speak of. And so it was a little bit more difficult than it is now. Mm-hmm. But certainly taking the time to find out what they're posting on Facebook or Instagram or wherever they do their social media, that's going to give you some idea of what's important to them, right? And then when you go visit, let's take you're going to visit in an office, right? You walk into somebody's office, you need to be your head on a swivel going, what's their office look like, right? Is it a minimalist office with very few things? Okay, that might tell me something about the individual. Is there a wall of pictures with everybody famous this person's ever met, right? Okay, that tells me something else about this individual. They're probably a little bit more about me. They probably like the idea of the acclaim and who they know and that sort of stuff. They have pictures of their family. Do they have pictures from Pebble Beach where they've played golf or whatever, right? So you're assessing all this information in the first few seconds when you walk in because you're hoping to find something that you can relate to. Right. So if you play golf, and I used to play golf for a while before it started costing me too much money and time. But if I saw that thing on the Pebble Beach on the wall, or for me, the Masters, right, I would ask, hey, have you been to the Masters? Was that recently? I just want that individual to start talking about something that's important to them. And I know Robin speaks to this often as well, right? It is, as you well know, it's not about us. It is about them.
Right.
So I'm trying hard early on to find things that are important. If, I might look at the books that are behind you in this video to see what is she reading, right? What's important. If I want to make that connection to be a little bit more human. As you said, we all have stereotypes. And if you see me a certain way and I come in and I play into that stereotype, then that's not necessarily a good thing. Mm-hmm. I kind of want to put you at ease, let you know what's going on, show that I have interest outside of the bureau. And that I'm engaging with someone that is human, that is important.
Yeah.
And listening, as you said earlier, listening really is the key. And not listening to, I'm not trying to, make this person feel uneasy or manipulate this person in a way that I'm trying to gain something, because I'm convinced that people see that right away. If I'm really genuine and interested in something, we all know how those conversations go. We all know we've had thousands of them. And if they fit into that mold, then people are going to be open and start talking to you. But as soon as you play into that stereotype and re-emphasize or reinforce what they already think might be bad, you've lost them.
Yeah. All right. So you want to have a little fun?
Sure.
All right. So you mentioned the wall behind me. So if you were, you were to knock on my door because something happened in my area and you want to see if I know anything. Let's just say that's the scenario. When you see me open the door and this is behind me, how do you take what you see as a way to build rapport? I'm putting you on the spot.
That's all right. So, from here, I can't read every title, but I would take away some things first to go, okay, she is a pretty voracious reader, right? I assume that she's read most of those books. I can see even from here little bookmarks sticking out from some of the tops of those books. So something about those books are important to you. If I could see one up close, I see Michael Port's book back there, Steal the Show, or Stephen Covey's, The Eighth Habit. And I saw something sticking out of that. I've read those. So and the fact that you've got a bookmark back there, I'm probably drawn to that and start talking about, oh, I see you've read that book. What did you think about something? And I would show that I've read that book, right? So that hopefully I built that connection to you. And I can't really tell too much about where they're grouped, but if I could tell sort of here's the different areas that you speak about, maybe some of them about leadership, obviously some about sales, and some about, other things, then that's going to give me an idea. I see a New England Patriots mug or cup back there, right? So you like the Patriots. I'm sorry, that's a bad thing. I apologize. I hate that, but right. So that tells me something about you, either from the area you're in, or the fact that you actually you like the Patriots. Maybe there's something we can talk about a little bit there. Maybe we can have a little fun with it. Maybe I say I don't know, the Jets or the Giants or somebody. Maybe we can have a little fun with it.
Oh, that conversation is going to go sideways, I promise you.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that I even think the fact that you've got unexposed boards back there at a 45-degree angle tells me something about what you like, the type of architecture you like, right? It's elegant in its own way, but it is simplistic, right? It's not an overly done background with, highly ornate knobs and pulls and hinges and so forth, right? It's but it tells me a little something about you. I may use some of that, I may not, but you've obviously set that up to let people know something about you. If I'm open to what I'm seeing, then I'm reading that and I'm understanding it and I'm responding to it and I'm showing you that, yes, that's important. I like what you've done and I have some connection. If I saw a book I didn't know about, would you tell me about that book a little bit? But again, it's got to be genuine, because I'm just doing it, to try to make conversation. Then as soon as we try to make that segue to the next topic, you're going to see that first conversation was just that, just words, and didn't really have a meaning. But I'm convinced that if you do it well, the segue is not a non sequitur. It actually is part of a conversation that we're having. And at the end, that's really what we're doing. When I'm building rapport as an agent, my interviews are conversations with a purpose, right? They're designed to get somewhere. I'm not manipulating you, but I understand where I need to go with it. And I want to make sure that we get to where we need to go.
Yeah. Because people want to feel like you get them in their world, right? Like, I don't know who wouldn't want to be analyzed by an FBI special agent. And you're spot on too. Like, I do read a lot. I read 69 books last year. I'm very much I love having a simple in the woods kind of a life. So we unconsciously are projecting to people some of these things. And so it's not manipulation. It's just, this is who I am. And this is, you're giving them here's an FYI of how to approach me. Like, if you open the door and you look down and you see a whole bunch of muddy boots, that they either like hiking or working outside in some way, or if there's smaller boots, then there's kids. There's all these kinds of things, but it all comes back to being willing to focus on the other person and learn more about them, because that's how we build relationships. And in the FBI, that was one of the things that you had said on stage, that without my team and those relationships, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish the things that we accomplished. And obviously building a rapport is the first step with that. But even within the FBI, what are some of the things that you've seen of great ways to build relationships and the results of that? Because I think in this day and age, we sometimes tend to look at technology and automation as ways to maybe speed up or bypass the need to build rapport and relationships. But what's your take?
Well, the relationships for us are extremely important. I tell people that you may think the FBI is a large organization, and we are large, but there are more police officers in New York City than there are FBI agents across the entire nation, right? So we couldn't do what we wanted to do without the help and without the cooperation of our federal, state, local partners, and even our private sector partners, right? So you're right, relationships really are vital to what we're trying to accomplish. But just like with an individual building rapport, you got to build that trust, right? And again, it goes back to the authentic reason that you're there. Are you coming across, and how do you treat that individual? At the end of the day, everything is about respect, right? So I know there's a guy that we arrested. I must have arrested him 1997, 98 timeframe. and he was the chief of staff for the mayor of the city of Richmond, back in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah. And I won't go into, how we got there, but at the end of the day, there were multiple conversations that I had with this individual. And then I had to convince this individual to cooperate with us because we were going after the mayor, because we eventually arrested the mayor of the city of Richmond. Now, he could have said, look, I'm doing this. This is all I'm going to do. Once we're done, I don't want anything to do with you, because, he went to jail for a few years. Mm-hmm. I got a call from him last year about something. We're talking nearly 20 years later. He's still calling me on the phone and still talking to me. And the key to all that, and I'm convinced any FBI agent will tell you this, the key to all that is how we treat people, right? Particularly the people that don't expect to be treated well, right? So whether or not it's the subject, or whether or not it's a person who thinks they don't have any power, they don't have any money, they're living the wrong side of town, or nobody's ever treated me well before in the past, right? Whether it's prior law enforcement or, the dog catcher, nobody's ever treated me well. It goes back to what we said earlier, our biases, our expectations. People still talk to us months, years later, because we were willing to treat them with respect and build that relationship. Because if you can go in, you can have a one-time conversation and you might get what you want, but it's over. It's done, right? So we know that in the process of building a case, it's going to take a long time. And if we screw that up from the beginning, then we're never going to get the real result that we intend.
It's such it's one of those topics I think that gets argued over a lot. Even in my own family, for example, we've had this conversation of, do you give someone respect because they deserve it, or do you give someone respect because they've earned it? And what I hear you saying is that everybody deserves some level of respect. Whether you think they've done bad things doesn't negate the fact that they're still a human being that deserves some sort of level of respect, because you don't know how that's going to change someone, it sounds like.
Right. You never heard me say I liked all these people, right? Or that they were my best friend. Yeah. I was going to go have coffee with them. I said I respected them. And you're right. I believe that if you respect human beings because they're human beings and that they are individuals, then you don't have to like everything about them. And they may be some of the most despicable people on the face of the earth. But again, you're treating them with respect because you understand this is still, at the very basis, a relationship you're trying to build. Mm-hmm. Right? And again, TV, movies, whatever, they want to show somebody coming in and, yelling and screaming and, slamming the doors. And look, that makes for great television, but that is not how things are done in real life. Certainly not how it's done in the FBI, because we understand what we have to do. And, whether it's somebody's a pedophile, crime against a child, or whether or not it's the politician who sold their trust down the road, or somebody who's committed murder, you still treat them with respect because they are human, not because of what they did or who they are. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you condone what they've done or like them, like you said. It's funny because as you were saying that, I thought of how many salespeople it is that I've talked to that say things to me like, I just need to get past the gatekeeper. And it's a common phrase that we've probably all heard, but I sometimes will find myself saying to them, they're a human being, and they know you're trying to get past them, and that just makes you a jerk. So instead, treat them with respect, ask their name, see how their day is going, actually treat them like a human being and not someone you have to get past to get what you want, because it's not about you.
Get past the gatekeeper, you need to recruit the gatekeeper.
Exactly.
We kind of joke in the office that, if you want anything done, you need to recruit the secretary. You need to recruit the person who, again, the world will look at and say, you got no power, right? You have no authority. Who are you? I need the boss, the big boss, right? No. You need that person who's right there, because in the end, that's the person who's going to be doing the work to begin with. And you treat that person with respect because they are an individual and a human being. I guarantee you will be much more successful when you try to go talk to that boss. But as soon as you disrespect that person, who do you think the boss talks to? I mean, that secretary, the gatekeeper, whoever that person is going to find a way to share that first encounter with the boss, right? Particularly if the boss is someone who isn't all encompassing, if they're a true leader and gets the feedback from their team, right? That's ridiculous, right? And if you do it like, well, if you try to ask yourself, well, who am I supposed to treat with respect? Then you've lost the game. You treat everybody with respect, you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said to somebody else. You just do it all the time. And it's funny too, because when I was single once upon a time and dating, one of the things that I would say to my girlfriends is they're like, well, how do you know who to date? I'm like, I watch how they treat other people. How do they treat wait staff? How do they treat people that would be servants to them or less than in some way? Because if they don't treat them with respect, there's no way they're going to treat me with respect later on. They're just, they're being nice. So it's I think something that's so important to remember today, every day, all the time, like you said. So going into our third R, because you've probably had it happen, as every salesperson who's ever had it happen, where you knock on someone's door and they don't want to talk to you. It doesn't matter how observant you are and how much you try to build a rapport. They're just like, nope, talk to the hand. What do you do?
Yeah, resiliency is really the key to taking care of yourself and ensuring that you can continue the case, right? Because you're right. I've lost track of the number of doors that have been proverbially slammed in my face, right? And although, again, everybody talks to the FBI, you really don't have to talk to the FBI. The other day I was at a Citizens Academy. We have a group of people every once in a while that go through where we teach them about the FBI. They come for a series of weeks and we give them lectures and interactions and we talk about what the FBI is. And this lady said, well, what happens when you knock on the door, as we said earlier, and they don't want to talk to you? And I say, well, I go down to IHOP, get me a cup of coffee and a pancake, and I figure out what else I'm going to do, right? Because you don't have to talk to me. Now, I got a search warrant, legal cause to be there. Okay, I can be inside your apartment, your house, but even then, you still don't have to talk to me. Mm-hmm. How do I get you to talk to me when you don't want to talk to me? We talked about the rapport, we talked about the relationship. At the end of the day, if you don't, it's not about me. Really, it's not. I've got to really work on making sure that I go back and reassess where am I in this case and how can I find another angle. Maybe it's not this person, maybe it's somebody else. But yeah, you get, told no a number of times. And if you gave up, you give up. You wouldn't solve any cases. Really, to me, resiliency is all about being persistent and not being a jerk about being persistent, but just not giving up, particularly for us trying to make a case.
Yeah. I went to a conference last year that's called Unbound, and they're very much about the persistence. And the thing that I took away from it is, are you the kind of person who, if someone needs help, for example, are you the kind of person that's going to wait for them to raise their hand and say, can you help me, even though you see that they need it? Are you going to just walk by? Or are you the kind of person that no matter how many times they say, no, I don't need your help. No, I don't need your help, even though their bone is sticking out of their leg or something. You have a solution for that and you can help them. Resiliency and persistence is not taking no for an answer in that case, because you know that you can help them. Now in sales, that we hear that all of the time, but it really comes down to, if it's not about you and it's really about the problem that they have and you have the solution, it's almost like a moral obligation to be resilient and not give up, because how else does the world become a better place if everybody just gave up? I think you said you go back to IHOP and you have some pancakes and coffee, which tells me a little bit about you. And finding other people to talk to. And sometimes, have you ever found that it's just, you have to go back and just try a different angle with that same person sometimes? What are some of the other ways that you look at, all right, how do I persist in this to get what needs to be accomplished?
Well, you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, Carole, when you said someone has a problem, you're trying to solve it. Oftentimes, when I talk to somebody, they don't realize they have a problem, or they certainly don't realize the extent of their problem. Mm-hmm. So part of me is trying to find the right words, the right phrases, sometimes the right analogies to trying to solve their problem. Sometimes for us, it's getting them over that hurdle. They know what the right answer is. Right? I remember a lady, she stole some money from a bank. She was a bank teller, and I don't know, it might have been about maybe $30,000, $40,000. Not a lot of money, but certainly enough.
Yeah.
And, we did an interview, and now we move into interrogation, which are actually two separate things. In the interview, you and I have a conversation. During the interrogation, I do almost all the talking, right? And so I try to find themes, and that's where the interview is important. That's where the conversation is important when you're talking to somebody, and I'm interested in the books behind you or what's important to you. I'm trying to find the themes that you think are important. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to her, right? And I'm going through this, why I knew she took the money, and she started here, and all of a sudden, the head drops and the shoulder drops, and she knows she's guilty. And man, then I made a mistake. I had a stack of documents that were bank statements. And I reached over to those stack of documents and I put my hand on them and I said, we'll just say her name was Carole. Carole,
great.
Carole, these statements prove that you took the money. And right then she set up, what? And she goes, those statements? And I knew then I was lost. And I said, yes, these statements. She said, oh no, those statements don't show anything. And you know what? She was right. You know why I knew she was right? Because I made that up. I, in essence, tried to trick her into doing something. She called me out on it. And so it took me another hour and a half. I'd already spent a good hour or so up to that point. It took me an hour and a half to get her back to the point where I solved her problem, where the problem was I needed her to admit it. Because in the end, admitting to that crime, while it may sound like a bad thing, was much better for her and her husband, her family, because we can resolve it. And she ended up with a plea deal and that sort of thing versus having to go to trial, right? So when I'm authentic, when I'm genuine, when I'm doing it the right way, right? I'm trying to solve your problem, and I do it, as I said, because I am trying to solve your problem. Then I don't need to make stuff up. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to worry about it. But the resiliency of at the end of an hour looking at her and she's saying, no, I know this didn't do it. I could have just said, well, you're right. You called me. It's time to go home. I started over again. I found different ways. And I'm convinced that you got to continue to try. And as you said, it's that problem you're trying to solve at the end. Sometimes they don't understand they got a problem, and you got to show it to them. Mm-hmm. But if you do it in a way that's a win-win, even though it may seem like it's not in your best interest, it really is and can be a win-win situation.
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing to remember, and I was even reminded of myself this recently, was just because you've hit that roadblock or feel like maybe you failed, like you just shared, it's not that you failed, you just haven't figured it out yet. Right. And so you had to go back and figure it out a new way. And that's really what resistance is. It's not that you never fail. Like I've had salespeople and managers, oh, well, I messed this one up, I'll just try better with the next one. It's like, no, it's never too late to be able to, like you did, go back, start over, find a different angle, learn from your mistake, because that's how we all get better. I wanted to make sure that we save some time too, also to talk about, this is something that you and I spoke about that is personally important to me as well. And we mentioned it in your bio when talking about childhood trauma. And this is such a sensitive subject. It's a sensitive subject because of the percentage of people that are affected by it. But people don't really feel comfortable talking about it. And this is something that you've kind of made a mission to talk more about. So tell me a little bit about why that is and what you're doing with it.
Well, thank you, Carole. It is important to me. In fact, I retired from the FBI, just like you said a few days ago, to devote whatever time I have left to trying to bring some attention to this issue. It's not one particular trauma that we're talking about. It's what is commonly referred to as adverse childhood experiences, what encompasses usually 10 recognized traumas. But they're not anything you haven't heard before. It's the physical, emotional, sexual abuse, physical, emotional neglect, drugs in the home, mental health, someone incarcerated. It's a few of those things that come together. 65% of all Americans, frankly, 65% of all the people in the world have experienced at least one of those childhood traumas. And they've social scientists and neuroscientists and everybody have found that there is a correlation between childhood trauma and what affects your health. Those things actually can reduce your life expectancy, or some of the diseases you have, it can contribute to it. It's not a causation, but there is a correlation. And so from my perspective, I found the same, and others have found the same when you start talking about the juvenile justice system. We got way too many kids in jail. We got way too many kids who are committing crimes who themselves have been victims. And so I'm trying to find ways, how can I bring attention to it so that we can, early on in their life, in a child's life, try to help them build resilience, try to help them find coping skills and ways to get through it. Because there are a lot of people that have experienced 9 or 10 of these traumas and still, as we say, turn out okay. The key there is because they built relationships. Mm-hmm. They had somebody in their life who was willing to help them. They built trust with that person, and then they had the right skills to be resilient in trying to overcome it and deal with it. And it's remarkable when you hear the stories and see what they've done in their lives and the trauma they faced and how they're now overcoming it and helping others. But I just want to bring attention to it, and it's important and something that I really feel passionate about. I won't think I would quit my job if I hadn't felt that way at all. And so, yeah, I'm trying to do that on social media through LinkedIn and Facebook and speaking at conferences. And even when I go and I talk about leadership, when I talk to people about their teams or their workplace, I say, look, the reason some businesses from time to time have workplace violence, mm-hmm. some businesses have lack of productivity, and you're dealing with the opioid epidemics, I can almost assure you that most of that stems back from adverse childhood experiences. And so if you're willing to invest the time in helping people deal with it from a mental health perspective and to build that relationship and so they can talk about it and talk through it, you'll have better results.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that I am passionate about. Also because, I've worked with salespeople and one-on-ones, and you find a lot of times the mindsets and the beliefs and the things that are holding them back or even causing them to behave in certain ways stems back from some kind of childhood traumatic experience that they had. And, I think that this is something we do need to proactively talk about before it hits the HR department as some kind of an episode, that there are things that employers can do and cultures that can be created that make it a safe place for someone to be, hey, this is something I'm struggling with and why. I think it can be life-saving. So thank you for doing that and for quitting the FBI to pursue that, and for joining us today. And if anyone has questions for Chris, please, I encourage you to follow him on Facebook, on LinkedIn, check out his website. Chris, thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing more things come your way as far as that goes, and any way that we can help to support the cause, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Carole. I appreciate it very much. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned for our next episode by subscribing to the Sales Experts channel or the Unbound Growth blog and YouTube channel. Let's continue the conversation there or on the Sales Experts LinkedIn group. Check the attachments for links to both and to follow our guests on social media and their websites. Until next time.